because I refuse to not be first.
Do we do enough? Well, I never shut up about it.
It must have been about 16, 17. We nicked their guilt rings. Right, the bouncers' guilt rings.
This is no good for me. That's the reality. If you want the honest truth, and I see it every day.
Episode 2 of Talking Smart with PUGH and McCART. I'm Andrew McCART, that's Joe PUGH, the Pugmeister himself. Joe, I tell you what, that is some swanky hotel room you're in, by the way.
It's not bad. It's not bad. As far as hotel rooms go, it's one of the better ones I've stayed in. It's the Kimpton Clock Tower Hotel in Manchester. Been up here from Wednesday for the big fight week. Lee Wood, he avenged that loss against Lara to become a two-time world champion. And it was a fantastic fight night, a fantastic week. And I'm sure we've got a lot to talk about, Andy.
Definitely, because there was 3 world title fights on it this weekend. I'm obviously, you wouldn't have been able to watch the Belfast show or the show down in Bournemouth. But we'll touch on them. I jumped in and out. I had a couple of screens going in my house, so I'll touch on them. But for you, you were at Lee Wood, Lara. Good fight week. Just tell me about how Lee's demeanour all fight week. How was it?
I think both fighters were very cagey. As we later on found out, Lara was struggling to make the weight. Mm-hmm. And I think Lee Wood makes no mistake about it. He doesn't hide anything. He struggles to make championship weight at featherweight, but he done it. He was on the scales. He made the weight in the end. But I spoke to Lee on the Wednesday, the start of the week, and he was just so confident. He was so confident. He just knew what he needed to do, slight adjustments to make it work for him. And at the end of the fight, I know we'll talk about the fight in a minute, but Ben Davison said, look, these have done 19 rounds together now, and Mauricio probably only won 2 or 3 of those in the 19 rounds, but we know he always had that equaliser, but he negated it really well, and he was so confident. And now, after seeing what I saw last night, I can understand why he was.
Mm-hmm. I think if you go back to the first fight with Lara, Ben Davison, Lee Wiley, and Lee Wood, they obviously seen something in Lara to pick him. And like I say, he was winning the fight until he tried to hook with a hooker. You know what I mean? And we saw what happened. I mean, the immediate rematch, I think they implemented the game plan that they went to do in the first fight. They implemented it well. It was the manipulate that space with the jab to the body, manipulate the space. And when he comes in, land the uppercut. And we saw in the second round that the uppercut worked. So for 12 rounds, it's hard to keep Lara off you, but to stay disciplined and have patience. And I think that was the key for Lee Wood last night. But sitting ringside, talk about what you saw in the fight and obviously the atmosphere, because I know a Manchester fight night is a special night, but I could hear it on the TV. It looked like a great buzz in there.
First of all, Nottingham really did go up to Manchester in their masses last night. It was a fantastic atmosphere, better than I expected. Me and Coogan were actually sitting next to Lee Wood's family throughout the fight, which is always interesting just to see that extra dynamic. And when he did get that knockdown early on in the fight, it was kind of just hold your breath moment, because as we saw in the first fight, it was going so well for him, but it's small mistakes, fine margins at the pinnacle of this sport. Mm-hmm. And as we found out last time, Lara is a very, very hard puncher. And I know we can, after time, you can look back in hindsight, but I do think the weight probably did play a part in this, because if you look back, all the way back to kind of lockdown when Lara come over for the first time as this unknown entity against Josh Warrington. In the build-up, he was always so confident with that fight. He was very talkative to whoever was in the bubble, and it was kind of maintained that vibe throughout his time here as he's come over to the UK, his 4th time fighting. But there was something different about him this week. Again, we can all after time. There was a different edge about him. He wasn't in the best mood. But at the end of the day, you can take nothing away from Lee Wood. It is an absolutely fantastic performance. Mm-hmm. Credit to Ben Davison, Lee Wiley and Billam-Smith, because they got that game plan absolutely spot on. It was kind of textbook of beating Bronco Lara.
I think I was excuse me. I was listening to Ben in the corner, and he was just saying everything right. There was nothing. There was nothing big he was asking from Lee Wood. He was just saying to him, discipline, patience, jab to the body as he comes in, step back as he comes in. Do you know what I mean? He was just so. The game plan was there, and I've been around Ben and Lee as well and Baza, but you know what they're like with the laptops and how they study their opponents. They're laser focused in, look at little minute little things that a fighter does, and they try and capitalize on it. Which is, listen, that's new age coaching, and Ben does it to an absolute T. But Lee Wood is the WBA featherweight champion of the world. And that's tell you right now, Joe, the featherweight division for me is the best division in the whole of boxing. Absolutely love it. And I've explained why about the fighters. You've got Brandon Figueroa, you've got Ray Vargas, you've got Rubsy Ramirez, McConlon, you've got Lopez, Lara, Wood, Warrington, Jazza Dickens, Ray Ford, Ray Abbey. Geez, man, you've got loads that I've probably missed out a couple more, but the top 10 or top 15 in that division can easily be world champions in their own right. And just keep playing hot potato with these world titles. There's a different world champion every week, it seems, in this division. So it's the best division to be in for me. And I think that now that Lee Wood, who boxed to the absolute perfection, the game plan you spoke about there, it sets up that Josh Warrington fight, either be in Nottingham or Leeds. I think that Lee Wood wants it in Nottingham. I think that's what Lee wants.
I think Josh would be more than happy to go to Nottingham as well, because he's fought in Leeds over such a long period of time now. I know he had the one fight behind closed doors at Wembley, so you can't really include that one because there was no crowd there. But Josh Warrington has always wanted an away day. He's always wanted to take his base out to a different part of the world. I know it was always preferably the United States, but all go down to that city ground, half and half. It'd be absolutely massive. It's going to be a difficult task, as Eddie Hearn said last night after the fight, because once the season starts, you've got to time it right. You might have to have a little bit of luck on your side with maybe an away day, then an international break. But that we do know there are September international breaks, so hopefully it can be done. But I think kind of something that shocked me when he first said it, but then taking time to look back at it, it kind of makes sense, is that Lee Wood said he's probably only got 2 more fights. And it's so important for him to have that city ground. He said he wants that fairy tale ending for him. So with that being said, we know we want Josh Warrington, but who's the other fight for him? If you could, in an ideal world, who do you think, Andy, is the 2 fairy tale fights for Lee Wood to kind of top off what's been a fantastic roller coaster of a career?
I think you would put it be a unification fight. Would you bring Lopez over? Because now Lopez is known because he's beat McConlon and he's beat Warrington. You've got all the other world champions. You've got Jazza Dickens. Believe it or not, that Jazza Dickens fight might not be a big selling fight. It might not sell at the City Ground, but he is in the featherweight division. He does hold an IBO world title, which probably people don't think that is a world title, but it is a world title in its own right. It's a piece of the puzzle, as some fighters might call it, and. I don't know. Probably a unification. Do you know what I mean? The unification fight, the thing, but it'd have to be a name that would sell. I mean, Nick Ball last night, he put on a great performance in the co-main out in Belfast last night. I watched his fight. He's a little absolute dynamo, a mini Mike Tyson. I don't know. Honestly, the only one that makes sense is Josh Warrington. I think that's the only one that would. I think Lee would probably sell out the City Ground in his own right, but it'd have to be for a unification. Rubsy Ramirez, Lopez, Ray Ford maybe, because he's fought at Nottingham before. Ray Ford, Jazza Dickens, Nick Ball. But the one for me, it has to be just Josh Warrington. I think like you said, the football fans of Nottingham and Leeds, that 50-50 split down the middle, atmosphere will be tremendous. But who do you think? You got anyone in your mind? Do you ask me that question because you were half thinking of a name that I didn't mention there?
I think next, Warrington.
Mm-hmm.
If he were to beat Josh, I'd love to see the Lopez fight. You mentioned that the featherweight division, in your opinion, is probably the best division. And part of that is because a lot of these guys have fought each other. If you look, Josh Warrington's fought Lara twice. Lara's fought Lee Wood twice now. Conlon Wood, Lopez Warrington, Lopez Conlon. They're all mixing it up. And that kind of two belts, the WBA and the IBF, where they've been kind of mixed around a lot, they've all fought each other. They're all quite well known in this country. That even the likes of Luis Alberto Lopez, he's fought kind of including Isaac Lowe. If you remember, he fought Isaac Lowe at York Hall. Fantastic fight, and put him down with the first punch. And then went back to the States, comes back over to obviously fantastic performance December last year against Josh Warrington. Then I'm sure we'll move on to it in a minute. But that Conlon stoppage last night, which again, it's quite difficult to watch at points, but fantastic performance from Luis Alberto Lopez.
Well, I'll tell you what, though, Joe, that was probably a perfect segue now to jump into the Conlon fight. Well done to you, man. You're just smooth at your job, man. I'll tell you what, them Instagram stories as well, the performance seal. You're good on the camera, mate.
Performance seal.
You're good on the camera, but a face for radio.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I agree.
I'm only joking, young man.
My voice, your face, mate. That's what we'll do.
Not my face. Look, this is, you want this grey beard or this bald head, mate. Don't none of that. Yeah, Mick Conlon last night. I take it you probably watched the knockout. You saw what the knockout was. Yeah. It was in the 5th round, I believe, if I remember. But Mick Conlon was boxing. The first 2 rounds was boxing great. He was keeping him at range. But the thing with Lopez, he's got such a weird style, a style that you probably you don't teach. I mean, he swings big arse winders. He pulls his hand right behind his arse and he swings big looping shots like that. So Mick was trying to control the distance in the southpaw stance, jabbing at the body. The same shot that he knocked Lee Wood down, the overhand left hand. He was landing it a couple of times, and he landed some decent shots on Lopez, but Lopez just kept on coming forward, and it was just one of them ones where, I don't know, it was just because he's got such an unorthodox style. Even though Mick was trying to control the range, he was just lunging in with big shots. You know what I mean? And then as he was lunging in, he was lunging in one big shot, and it works for him. It's not a technique that I would teach, or I would, if the fighters in the gym that I've got, I wouldn't say to them, listen, pull your fist right behind your arse, and then swing. I just wouldn't teach that. But listen, I'm not saying he's a terrible boxer for that, because he did through the right uppercut. He rocked Mick in the 3rd round, I think it was, well, right uppercut, he followed it up with a left hook, and then in the 5th round, again, he just sort of like Mick ducked in, and then he threw the uppercut and landed on Mick. It was just it was a good performance from Lopez, and I'm gutted for Mick, because I mean, that Belfast crowd and that Belfast fans, I mean, that gives you that extra 10%. I'm sure that's what they did to Mick last night.
I got sucked in to this fight because I thought that Conlon would be able to outbox him, and probably thought he would win on points in Belfast, get that crowd behind him. And from what I've seen, the atmosphere looked absolutely amazing. I watched the 3rd round, and then I've watched the knockout. The 3rd round is when I think Lopez really started to put the punishment on, and we saw that crowd roar. But I think it can't be underestimated how unorthodox Lopez's style is. And because it's so out of the ordinary, it's very, very hard to deal with. Mm-hmm. And I think credit has to be put on Josh Warrington's name now, because if he'd have started a bit quicker in that fight, he could probably still be the IBF world champion right now. Mm-hmm. At the latest stages of that fight, he was winning it, and in the end, closed the gap on those scorecards. It ended up being a close decision. But absolutely gutted for Michael Conlon. Mm-hmm. I don't really know where he goes now. I'd be interested to get your thoughts on that. But Luis Alberto Lopez, there's a lot of big fights for him, and he's a danger man in the division now. Definitely,
man. I was half thinking if Lara won and Lopez won, could you imagine Lopez Lara? But now it's like I can imagine any of these featherweights. I mean, Mick can probably stay down at featherweight. I mean, he's not one of them. He's lost 2 world title fights against two fighters. I mean, the Lee Wood fight, he was winning the fight until he got caught in the last 30 seconds. Do you know what I mean? And he dropped Lee Wood in that fight. So it was one of them. It's one of them things, boxing yourself, Joe. One punch can change anything. And that's just, Mick's just been on the wrong end of it the last 2 world title fights. Can he rebuild? He probably can rebuild because that fan base in Belfast and Ireland is unreal. He's always going to have that support. He can always bring in he can always sell a fight in Belfast with any name, if that makes sense. He can bring in any of the world champions. He can bring in a Brandon Figueroa, a Robsy Ramirez, a Nick Ball maybe, a Jazza Dickens for the IBO world title. Listen, Jazza Dickens, he's based out on Ireland now.
That fight sells.
Jazz has made it clear to me that he would love to fight Mick for the Celtic world title, whatever that means. Even though Jazz is not a Celtic man, he's from Liverpool, but we'll discuss that at a later date. But listen, Mick can rebuild. He's got that fan base. He's got a huge support, and he'll stick by Mick. Frampton done it. Katie Taylor's done it. No, I mean, look at the Irish. They stick by their own, and they'll stick by Mick no matter what. So Jazza Dickens against Mick Conlon for the IBO world title. Why not? I can see that. If not, is he tight at the weight at featherweight? Who knows? Would he move up to super featherweight? But I think for Mick, I think a good fight for him would be a Jazza Dickens. Rebuild like he did last time after Lee Wood fight, get a couple of good wins under his belt again, and then Jazza Dickens in Belfast. Why not?
100%. I think that fight, I didn't personally think of that fight, and it does make sense. Obviously, it's up to Conlon what he does now. He probably needs to take time, probably with his family, with his team, to rethink his next steps, but it certainly be very, very interesting. I think probably move on to the next and final world title fight that take place in the UK. This time at the bottom of the United Kingdom, Bournemouth, a stadium fight. Chris Billam-Smith in front of his home crowd for years in the making. He's always wanted that opportunity to fight in the Vitality Stadium. He took it with both hands, and he done a job on his old stablemate, Lawrence Okoli. He took that cruiserweight title off of him. And he shocked a lot of people. You know what it's like, Andy, when you're around these fight weeks, even though I wasn't in Bournemouth, but you're talking to members of the media, people around boxing, and we were saying, has Billam-Smith got a chance on Saturday night? And no one said he didn't have a chance, but a lot of people were saying, obviously it can't be underestimated how tricky Lawrence Okoli is. They both know each other so well. But again, another fantastic game plan from Chris Billam-Smith.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to be honest, it was a frustrating fight to watch. Very, very frustrating. I mean, not many punches were going in. And the punches that did go in it was 1-2 hold from Okoli, and then the referee obviously deducted 2 points from him. But then Billam-Smith, even though you can see Chris was getting very, very frustrated with the holding and whatnot, he kept his cool. He wasn't complaining, he wasn't doing anything, and then he managed to get a knockdown, another knockdown, and then he knocked down again in the 11th round. I think it was 6, 10, 11, I think it was, the knockdowns. I can't quite remember. So he got them 3 knockdowns, which was beneficial to him, and the 2-point deductions. Now, there was a judge that had the fight a draw. Now, I was trying to do the maths on that, right? If Billam-Smith got 5, 10, 8 rounds, and so that's 5 rounds, the 10 points up in the first 5 rounds. Let's just say that, right? And then Okoli won the last 7 rounds. That's still a 113, 110 win to CBS, Chris Billam-Smith. So where did the judge that gave it a draw? Where did we get the 2-point deductions and the knockdown? Did he give it a 10-9? I don't understand. There wasn't a round that Okoli was absolutely dominating when he got the knockdown. He never came back from the knockdown and dominated the round that you could probably say, well, do you know what I mean? You can give that a 10-9 round, because I was speaking to a British referee, a very, very famous, well-known British referee, and I was talking to him about, I wouldn't name his name, and talked to him about judging and scoring fights. And he said to me, if I was fighting you, Andrew, and I knocked you down in the first second of a round, but then you came on and you absolutely annihilated me for the next 2 minutes and 59 seconds, or 50 seconds, whatever it will be, right? Is that still a 10-8 round to me? Or do you get a 10-9 back? I was like, well, you probably give it a 10-9. So that's how he broke it down to me. So I was like, well, I can't see where a 10-9 round can come in for Okolie, if that makes sense. So I don't understand where that judge got that 112 scorecard from, but I don't know.
Oh, as I say, like, obviously, I got back from the show very, very late, so I haven't watched the whole fight. But just reading what everyone said, and I've seen the knockdowns, I've seen some of the holding, and like you said, it was probably a frustrating fight, but I think a lot of people expected that. No one was shocked that it played out the way it did style-wise.
Mm-hmm.
But 112 was just absolutely bizarre. I don't think it can be justified just to have kind of what should realistically be 5, 10, 8 rounds. First of all, taking away the holding, taking away the point deductions. When do you ever see a fighter lose on the scorecards with 3 knockdowns? Anyway, it's very, very rare.
Very rare.
Very rare.
Very rare. Because that's 6 rounds up, really, if you look at it like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's crazy. Joe, your screen's froze a little bit there, mate. I don't know. Your face is frozen.
Oh God, that don't look good.
No, it's all right, man. It's your beautiful face. I'm not sure people that are watching on YouTube, but if they're listening on Spotify and whatnot, they don't mind. But it's all good. We can still hear you.
Might redo it. Let's have a look.
We'll keep them entertained.
Am I back?
Don't worry about it. And you can see, I was just talking about Chris Billam-Smith as well. How did you see him in the ring after?
Yeah, emotional, mate.
Emotional, exactly. Have you seen how much that meant to him? And even a frustrating night, you're probably selling up. There we go. There he's back.
There we go. Back.
Yeah, I think selling out the Vitality Arena in front of 15,000 fans, you probably want to give them a little bit of excitement. Do you know what I mean? You want to, and he did. He knocked Okolie down 3 times, but you probably want to be in that fight where there's ups and downs, there's drama. Do you know what I mean? There's big shots landing, but there was a lot of holding last night, and I mean that's Okolie's, that's his style. Do you know what I mean? It's that boom, boom, big jab, big right hand. Exactly. He was very, very gracious in defeat. Lawrence Okolie, so fair play to him in that, and he's going to activate the rematch clause as well. It seems like, but well done to Chris Billam-Smith. Meant a lot to him. You've seen how much it meant to him, and I like when boxing is thriving. I like that. But I think trying to watch on your phone and watching the TV, and I've got kids running about. Do you know what I mean? So it's difficult. I had to kick them to bed early on, do you know what I mean? So it's difficult to have 3 shows in one night because you got to pick your poison, really, don't you? But it is what it is. It was a good night, but I just want to touch on something that's away from what we're talking about here. I just want to say that this year alone, I thought about it, right? Think about this year, the fights we've had this year. We've had Eubank Smith at the beginning of the year, great fight. We've had Yardbird to Biev, great fight. Wood Lara 1, great fight. We've had Plant Benavidez, great fight. We've had Tank Davis, Ryan Garcia, great fight. We've had Wood Lara 2. We've had all these. We've had even just look McConlon Lopez. We've had this Chris Billam-Smith, Lawrence Okolie fight out in the States. We've had Canelo Ryder as well in Mexico. Now we've got Spence Crawford come up in July. There's murmurings and whispers, and you've heard it all the time, that these heavyweights might get it on with each other. Joshua, Wilder, Fury, Usyk, that might go ahead as well at the end of the year. So the fact that we've got Spence Crawford in July, we've had Tank Davis, Ryan Garcia, I think 2023's now when into June, come up in June, halfway through the year, I think it's not been a bad year. It's not been a bad year.
It certainly hasn't, and hopefully we can get those heavyweights. I know it's a blank fight week next week, no major boxing, certainly our side of the Atlantic. So we'll probably go into that heavyweight scenario. Let's see how it plays out, because it updates every 10 minutes, it seems, as people put tweets out, as people put information out, and we'll definitely talk about Spence Crawford. But yeah, I think boxing is starting to look a bit healthier, and that's what we need. We need boxing to be in a healthy place. Gives us more to sink our teeth into. But just before we do start to wrap this up, Andy, I just want to give a quick mention to Jack Catterall last night on the undercard in Manchester. 15 months out of the ring. A couple of promoters later, rescheduled fight, postponed fight, cancelled fights since the Josh Taylor fight. And he got in there, he turned it on. Darragh Foley, a tough man. He'll come again against some game opponents. I'm sure promoters will be looking to use him as a fantastic measuring stick for these world-level guys. And now, Jack Catterall spoke to him after the fight. Let's see him in against Regis Prograis. He wants the big names. He wants, like, Devin Haney. He's going to be moving up to 140. Tank, he's going to be around 140. The names are there for Jack Catterall. Let's get these fights made, and he's certainly got the talent for it.
Definitely, I think that you mentioned there that 140-pound division as well is a good division as well. And these fights they can get made now. It seems to me that if the fighters just like Tank Davis Garcia got made because the fighters spoke to each other. Spence Crawford got made because the fighters were on the phone to each other, getting everything organised themselves. I think if you want to fight a fighter, give them a message, give them a call, and then get the promoters involved and stuff like that. I think that's the best way. But we'll end it on this. Joe, I saw that shirt you wore at the press conference day or the weigh-in day. Man, you're a cool cat. I'll give you that, brother. I'll give you that.
Well, I'll be honest. I did flap it a little bit. I flapped it a little bit. I'll be honest. I did have it on. I then took it off for the weigh-in because I was like, no, too much attention is going to be on me. I need to do some work. But I did put it back on when I went out later. But as ever, thank you very much, Andy. We've got a lot of content coming out over the next couple of days. It's been a very, very packed week for the IFL feed with 3 shows. 3 shows, I think 5-6 people on the ground putting out content every single day. So please give that a watch. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram at IFL TV. But there's a very, very golden bit of content I'd like to say that will be coming out at some point today. I'm going to give this a plug. For the first time in 6 years, O'Hara Davis and Eddie Hearn come head to head. And I must admit, you've got to watch this. You have to watch OD and Hearn go head to head because it does not fail to entertain.
Good stuff. I seen a little clip of it. I think did you post something on Instagram and the IFL? I think I saw it last night. There was a Yeah, I saw it last night. So listen, I'm looking forward to that. I'll catch up everything today. I know Raza was in Bournemouth and Con was out in Belfast, you and Coogan there. So yeah, good one. It's until we meet again, Joe. I think, listen, we need to do a fight week together. I don't think we've done one yet. So when you jump on that train with Coogan, let them know we need to do a fight week very, very soon and get this do this show while we're on the ground, which will be fun. But listen, Joe, get safe journey home. I know your train's in half an hour's time, so safe journey home, mate. Keep smashing what you're doing. You're doing very well, and I'll speak to you next week.
See you next week, Andrew. Thank you very much, and
cheers, guys.
Make sure you're listening. Cheers, mate.
Listen, Spotify, all the major platforms, YouTube, everywhere you can find us. Have a look for us and give us a thumbs up. That would be appreciated. But Joe, as always, speak to you soon, brother.
See you next week.
Cheers, mate.
Because I refuse to not be first.
Do we do enough? Well, I never shut up about it.
It must have been about 16, 17. We nicked their guilt rings. Right, the bouncer's guilt rings.
This is no good for me. That's the reality. If you want the honest truth, and I see it every day,